This is Living Power with Dan Hurst.
On the other hand, in a couple relationship, if you're not comfortable talking about a significant problem between the two of you, that is also a good indication of where the relationship is. You know, if there's a 3-ton elephant in the room and you're just not willing to talk about it, that's a pretty good sign of where the relationship is. What are you comfortable talking about in your relationship? That says a lot about where the relationship is. Now, the fourth foundation for building a good relationship is have a dream. You need to have a dream. Good relationships have dreams. They have ambitions. They have plans. In fact, one good way to determine where things have gone wrong in a difficult relationship is to question the dream. What was our dream? What really was our dream? And sometimes in marital counseling situations, I've asked the people, what was your dream as a couple? Well, you know, we wanted to get married and we wanted to, you know, eventually have kids and settle down, you know, and what was your dream? Was that your dream? Really? I mean, that's the limit of your dream? You just wanted to get married and have kids and that was it? What was your dream as a couple? What was your focus? What were you going to accomplish? What was God going to do in and through your life? What did you believe God was motivating you to do? What was your dream? What was your ambition? What were your plans? If you can define the dream, you can define the direction. If you can't define the dream, you've got a relationship with no direction. Good relationships have dreams, but a relationship needs to be based on God's plans and God's ambitions. No question about that. And a relationship that is based on God's plans and God's ambitions is headed in the right direction. Jeremiah 29:11 says this, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and to not harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." There are 4 things that God says right there that He has planned for you and for your relationships. 4 things that God has planned for your relationship. The first thing is He plans to prosper you. Oh boy, we're going to get rich. No, that's not what it says, sorry. The word prosper is actually the word shalom, peace. It is literally the word peace, shalom. And that word is used in the context of, really, He plans to offer you the prosperity of peace. Now listen, there are an awful lot of relationships that would settle for that. If I could just have peace in my relationship, because it's just a minefield. It's just like, it's like walking on eggs. You know, everything's going along okay, and then all of a sudden one little thing happens, one misstep, and it all just seems to fall apart. It's like a battle zone. I just would like to have some peace in my relationship. And God says, look, my plan is for you to have peace in your relationship. The second plan is to not harm you. This is a very interesting statement. It's very clear that God is saying here that calamity and distress are not in His plans for you. You get that? God says, my plan is for you to not be harmed. In other words, God does not want harm and misery for you. God, you know, we have this idea that when things fall apart, you know, and the tornado came and destroyed us and everything, it was like, it must have been God's will. No. God says, my plans are to not harm you. Things happen. Storms happen in life. Sometimes they're caused by freaks of nature, and, you know, we've built up and we've built our houses in such a way that they can't withstand those storms. Sometimes it's just somebody else's action that causes problems in our life. Sometimes we suffer the consequences of other people's sin or other people's choices and decisions. But God says, my plan for you is that you not be harmed, that you not be damaged. That's my plan. That's my goal. The third plan that He has for you is a plan for hope. Hope means confident anticipation. It's so important to understand that. Because in our context and in our language, the word hope means wish. You know, man, I hope the Chiefs have a good season next year. See, that's just wishing. That's not biblical hope, because biblical hope is confident anticipation. I don't have that about the Chiefs next year. Biblical hope is confident anticipation. Confident anticipation. That's what, in the Old Testament and the New Testament, both words literally mean the same thing. And God says, I want you to have confident anticipation. Confident anticipation. In other words, God has something He wants you to look forward to. Do you realize that God looks at your relationships, couples, business, friendships, family? He looks at those relationships and He says, I want you to look forward to this. I want you to look forward to this relationship. I want you to have a confident anticipation that this is really going to be good. It has been good and it's going to be good. There are going to be some good times. Yes, we're going to have difficulties in our lives, but there are going to be those good things that overwhelm the bad times. He wants you to have a confident anticipation in your relationships. And then the fourth thing that he has planned for you is that He plans a future for you. He says, I plan a future for you. Now, this is an interesting word. Why? Because the word future literally means the end. I mean, it literally means end. Now, we say the future, but what God is saying, I have an end for you. Now, what does He mean by that? An end of what? An end of the crisis and the sorrow. An end of those difficulties in that relationship. An end of those times that seem to weigh you down. God says there is an end in sight. I have a future for you. This will be over, and then I have something else for you. God says there is a future for your life. 4 things that He has planned for your relationships. Any kind of relationship. To prosper you, in other words, the prosperity of peace. To not harm you. To give you confident anticipation. And to give you a future beyond the difficulties of the relationship. A relationship needs the assurance that God is up to blessing it. That's what God intends to do. In a relationship that's based on God's purpose and plans, the things that God wants to do, God says, I am going to bless that. Relationships that don't really believe that God wants to bless them are in trouble. Are in trouble. I love what Proverbs 16:3 says, commit to the Lord whatever you do, and He will establish your plans.